Hey friends, I hope that you are having a wonderful day. My name is Luciano and I make videos where I talk about a wide range of different topics. Today's video is going to be one of the more experimental videos that I'm trying out as I start to develop a voice in my own videos and in the content that I create. And as a result of that, you don't have to have seen any of my other videos to gauge whether or not this one will be of interest to you. I'm going to be talking about communication, logical argumentation, and fallacies, and very specifically, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite fallacies, the argument from ignorance. If that sounds exciting or interesting to you, I hope that you'll stick around, and if this is your first time watching my content, I hope that you will check out other things that I have made and see if maybe there is something of interest to you there. I make a lot of different videos where I talk about, honestly, a sometimes hilarious breadth of topics ranging from jump chains and choose your own adventures to news, policy making, and history. So there's definitely a lot of stuff here for a wide range of different folks. And if this is not the first time that you've seen one of my videos, I'm so excited that you've decided to stop in. I would love for you to check out other ones of my videos and to make me a bigger part of your day. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we go any further, I think it would be very important and is very wise of us to sit down for a second and give me a chance to explain why I think this matters. We live in a golden age of opportunity, the greatest age of opportunity, at least in my opinion, for people who wish to gain influence and become celebrities. It is easier than ever for someone to go from being a regular person with a regular job to becoming someone who has a major platform and has opportunities to shape opinions and minds and also share their own insights, thoughts, and beliefs with other people. And I think that with that, we have a certain ethical responsibility to ourselves and to others to make sure that we understand, among other things, the importance of responsible rhetoric, the importance of logical argumentation, and very significantly, the dangers of fallacies and fallacious thinking. And that is part of the reason why I want to create a series probably called some variation of the Communication Corner, where I sit down and where we talk about communication, rhetoric, logic, arguments, and all of those related things. So that way we can help ourselves gain both the most reasonable beliefs possible in a wide range of different areas and also absolve ourselves of fallacious thinking and fallacies in our reasoning. People have examples and a simple explanation of what a fallacy is moving forward in this video. We are essentially going to borrow the understanding of fallacies provided by the Lindsey Wilson College, which is a college in Columbia, Kentucky. And in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and read off this from one of their websites called Introduction to Fallacies. A fallacy is an illogical step in the formulation of an argument. An argument in academic writing is essentially a conclusion or claim with assumptions or reasons to support that claim. For example, blue is a bad color because it is linked to sadness is an argument because it makes a claim and offers support for it. Regardless of whether the claim we make is true or false, we might use reasons that either do not logically support that claim or are not logically supported themselves. For example, the argument above might be considered fallacious by someone for whom blue represents calmness. While politics, law, and the media are notorious for these tricks, fallacies are an everyday occurrence in society and are often committed unintentionally. We even commit them ourselves. And because fallacies can make illogical arguments seem logical, tricksters use them to persuade their audiences to believe illogical claims. By learning to recognize fallacies, however, we can avoid being deceitful and being misled by others. This source then goes on to provide a list of 21 commonly committed fallacies. We are not going to be talking about all of these, at least not today. So hopefully someone will be able to learn some of these fallacies, and we will definitely be discussing some of these in videos in the future. It is worth noting that the argument that we are going to be discussing today is related to shifting the burden of proof. The explanation provided in this source about shifting the burden of proof is that manipulators know that having to prove an argument true makes their job more difficult, so they try to shift that burden to their opponents. You say she didn't do it, but there's no hard evidence to support that idea. This is a very important fallacy to understand. I think it is one of the most important fallacies to understand. Shifting the burden of proof and the arguments of ignorance are, if not the same thing, certainly in the same ballpark. And we are now going to go ahead and more formally and seriously, focusedly discuss the arguments from ignorance. Before moving forward and diving right on in to the argument from ignorance, let's take a second to establish a definition of a simple concept known as the burden of proof. The burden of proof is the simple idea that if someone makes a claim, it is on them to provide some sort of evidence or support for their position, for the claim that they have made. Now, there is intense discourse around this idea in many different circles, but that very simple definition, the basic idea that if you make a claim, it is on you to provide some sort of evidence for that claim, is the simple definition that we are going to use for the sake of establishing, if nothing else, the easiest ability for us to move forward as we dive into a discussion about the argument from ignorance and the fallacy of shifting the burden of proof. To logicallyfallacious.com, a website that is all about fallacies. We are going to use this website to have a more focused and succinct look at the argument from ignorance. The description that this website provides is the assumption of a conclusion or fact based primarily on lack of evidence to the contrary, usually best described by absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Logical forms. X is true because you cannot prove that X is false. X is false because you cannot prove that X is true. The first example that this website provides is, although we have proven that the moon is not made of spare ribs, we have not proven that its core cannot be filled with them. Therefore, the moon's core is filled with spare ribs. This is a simple, amusing definition, amusing example, but the next one that we will see is a little bit more interesting, at least to me. To this very day, at the time of this writing, science has been unable to create life from non-life. Therefore, life must be a result of divine intervention. This is very fascinating because I did not know about this website before today, and one of their examples here is one related to religion. I am an atheist who enjoys debating people. I am fascinated by Christianity, and I am often frustrated by it. And I debate Christians in debate spaces all the time. A very common example of the argument from ignorance that I hear very often is that the resurrection must be true because we have not found Jesus' body. I am sure that many people, including many Christians who I respect and am close friends with, are capable of hearing this argument and understanding how incredibly weak it is, for a truly vast number of reasons, just how not good an argument this is. This argument type, this fallacy type, is something that is common not just in religious spaces or in spaces dedicated to allowing people to fight and bicker about religion and religious beliefs, but also surprisingly, or rather not surprisingly, in political spaces.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Senator Vance. Katrina Kaufman, CBS News. So a woman who was behind an early Facebook post about the Haitian migrants in Springfield has now apologized for spreading false rumors. You say that you have a responsibility to share what your constituents tell you, but don't you also have a responsibility to fact check them first?
Well, I think the media has a responsibility to fact check the residents of Springfield, not lie about them.
What you just saw was J.D. Vance, who is already and will remain, at the very worst, an American senator from the state of Ohio doing a fallacy live in real time. His response to a question, a very reasonable question, about his responsibility to fact check claims that he hears and then amplifies was to say that it is not his job to fact check, but the media's job to fact check him. That is not the way that logical debating and logical argumentation should work. We should not simply assume that the things that we hear are true. We should wait to see if there is evidence for them. And while how much evidence we need for them is very context sensitive, the idea that we should need evidence to believe that a community of legal migrants in an American community are butchering and then eating pets, that's pretty extraordinary. That is an extraordinary, pretty demonstrable claim. It is not something that we should take on faith. It is not a claim that we should believe simply because we heard it in the ether or from our constituents, as J.D. Vance says that he did. And it is very reckless for someone who, even if he loses the election, will still be a significant, influential politician for many years to come. It's reckless and dangerous for him to be so cavalier in how he talks about factual claims that he makes. This is not J.D. Vance talking about his favorite flavor of ice cream or his favorite couch cushion or anything like that. This is him making claims that have real impacts on actual living people. It is important that he be serious and that he fact check his own claims before he replicates them. It is worth noting that right now we have been discussing all of this as though J.D. Vance is a neutral figure and is someone whose intentions we cannot parse, but that is really not the case with J.D. Vance. For better or worse, J.D. Vance has an objective that he seeks to accomplish, and he is willing to do effectively anything for that objective. He wants to win an election. Like all elected officials, he wants to win an election that will bring him significant personal power, a significant boost to his level of influence, and a great deal of opportunities to influence the world stage in the future. So he is willing to spread reckless, obviously false ideas and claims if it means that his base of voters, the people that he is courting, are more energized, ready to go to the polls, and ready to vote for him. This is not someone who has a radio show that is just sharing something wacky that they saw on social media. This is a politician who has a vested interest in exciting his base and in getting them to go to the polls. And because he understands on some level that some of his ideas are unpopular and that some people are not exactly thrilled at the notion of voting for him or for his boss, he is willing to do more duplicitous things. He is more ready to spread extraordinary, very difficult to believe claims if he thinks that those claims will excite and energize the people that he is courting and get them ready and willing to vote for him and Donald Trump. And we do need to contextualize all of our considerations of the morality and ethics of things like this, because the idea that all politicians lie is an idea that is based in fact. It's difficult to do the work of a politician without eventually lying at some points. But there's a difference between small lies and small false statements and statements like, an entire community of people have been besieged by undocumented migrants, and those undocumented migrants are working to make life both harder and less pleasant for the people around them. That is a whole different category of claim from the idea that oh, if I get elected into office, I am going to work to make it so that you pay less in taxes, even if I have no intention of actually working to make it so that you have to pay less in taxes. Those are wildly different claims, and the sort of impact that they will have on real people is different. We need to remember that when we are having conversations about the real impact of things like rhetoric and logical fallacies and logical argumentation. I hold the position that shifting the burden of proof is dangerous because it is a fallacy that completely upends the entire point of logical argumentation and argument making and the exchange of ideas, at least in my opinion. And I think this because the whole purpose of these things, at least in an idealized world, is to expand our horizons and to gain new knowledge from the knowledge that other people have. When I engage in debates and when I argue with people, I hope that I learn something. I don't just want to make fun of someone who disagrees with me, although I will admit I am a mixed bag of a human, as we all are, and to me at least, it can be fun to make fun of other people and to have arguments at their expense, at least if we are arguing about something sufficiently serious. I'm not going to clown on people just for having a difference of opinion when it comes to music or art from me, at least as long as that difference of opinion is not something completely out of pocket. But if it's just something like, oh, I like a different band than you, I don't want to make you feel bad for liking a different band from me. But if we are debating about things and your argument is that people who are attracted to and are marrying someone of the same sex are bad because a book told me so, or because I deeply believe that it's bad to be attracted to people of the same sex as you, that is a different type of argument. And I might be a little bit more willing to have fun at your expense in that particular case. But it's really dangerous and reckless to try and shift the burden of proof. If you care enough about something that you are willing to talk about it and have a serious discussion about it, then I personally think that you should be armed with enough knowledge that you can back why it is that you believe this position. If your response to criticism is to be like, well, my position is true just because you can't disprove it, that is a deeply unserious response. It's toxic, it's fallacious, and it just shows me that you are not ready to have a discussion about something about a position that you hold. And I think that's odd. I think that there's certain contexts where that makes sense. I think that if you're a casual politics person and you're just like, oh, I happen to think that this politician's really cool, I think that that's one thing. But if you're over here having a serious discussion with people about the impact of immigration and the impact of diverse communities and how that can affect, in ways both good and bad, people's actual lives, I think that that should be something that it is reasonable to expect that if you're here saying that the stuff is bad, you should be armed with reasons for your position. And I personally think that those reasons are probably definitionally going to be bad reasons, but I at the very least think that if you're going to have that position, you've been convinced of it for some reason, through some sort of arguments that you heard. And you should be ready to share those arguments and help people understand why you came to that position. In an ideal world, when we have discussions, we would all be willing to change our minds if provided with sufficient evidence. But that is not the ideal world. We don't live in the ideal world. We are real humans. We are flawed. We are more dogmatically attached to some ideas than others, and it can be harder for us to let go of some ideas than others. But that said, if you can't be convinced to change your positions, I hope you at least have evidence for a position that you have. I think it's especially silly to do what JD Vance did and to make an extraordinary claim that, if true, would have significant evidence explaining and revealing that it's true, and to say, no, actually, it doesn't matter if I have evidence for it. What matters is if the media proves that it's true or not. That's just silly. Because the argument that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump were making was an extraordinary one. And it's reasonable to assume that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that if there is no extraordinary evidence, or indeed any evidence at all, we probably shouldn't believe the extraordinary claim. I think that that's a completely reasonable conclusion to come to, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and end this video here on a fairly succinct note. I do hope that this has helped expand your understanding of fallacies, and I hope that this video was engaging enough that in the future you are excited for Communication Corner videos. We're going to be talking about fallacies, we're going to be sharing examples of claims and doing all sorts of stuff if I continue this sort of experimental series, so we can consider this a pilot episode. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I can't wait to hear what you think of what we've talked about today. I hope that you have a wonderful time, and I can't wait to hear from you again. Bye-bye, everyone!